Thank you for joining us. We'll get started in a few seconds here, just giving folks a moment to transition in from class or their office or their respective workplaces to join us. We appreciate you being here on time, and we'll get started in just a moment. Take a quick stretch break, a personal moment, grab some water or coffee, and we'll let folks file in, and we'll get started in just a moment. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Seeing folks start to file in. Give it a few more seconds, and then we'll get started on our webinar. All right, welcome everyone. If you're just joining us, this is the webinar on culturally responsive teaching and learning in dual enrollment. Again, we are grateful that you chose to join us this morning. We think we have a pretty good agenda planned for you all, but just to get us started, in the chat, we're hoping that you can engage with us. And don't press in just yet, but we want you to take a moment to think about your favorite teacher, professor, instructor. This could be from elementary, middle, high school, or college, graduate school, or just maybe a community leader that taught you a whole bunch. On the count of three, we want you to drop in the chat that person's name to acknowledge them. So your favorite teacher. And we're hoping to have that waterfall effect, or you just give a moment to acknowledge them. So 1, 2, 3, go ahead and drop the name of one of your favorite educators from elementary, middle, high school, college, graduate school. Give them a shout out. Maybe they're on this call. Go ahead and drop their name, your favorite teacher. We see a middle college instructor, faculty from college, some educators that have since passed on, but we're still acknowledging them. So again, thank you all for taking a moment to acknowledge those important educators in our lives. And just a reminder that teachers, faculty members, instructors are just so important in the educational experience. And that sort of is setting the tone for us here today. On the next slide, we'll do our introductions. Um, I'm Laurencia Walker with the Career Ladders Project, and from the CLP team, I'm joined by Dr. Byron Reeves and Christina Sandoval, who not only is helping making this webinar come to fruition, but the course that you will be learning about. So appreciative of my colleagues here on the call and those that are joining us in the virtual space as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of our agenda, we're going to talk about culturally responsive pedagogical approaches and dual enrollment. Why are we even talking about this? Why is this a webinar? Why is this course of importance at this particular time? We're going to hear from our colleagues at the Bay Area K16 Collaborative about the vision for this course and what to expect sort of on the back end. And then we're going to talk a little bit more detail about the course structure and content. Talk about examples of the work that the participants, the faculty participants, engage in with this course. And then the exciting part is that you'll actually hear from the faculty that participated, that joined, that are joining us this morning. And then if we have time, we will engage with some Q&A with the audience. But don't worry if we don't get to that point. You can still drop your questions in the chat, and then we will include responses for you in our follow-up email, including the recording. So don't worry if we don't get to all the Q&A. We'll still be able to be responsive to the best of our ability. So thank you for that. And on the next slide, so why are we even talking about culturally responsive pedagogical approaches in dual enrollment? And so the next slide, just to sort of sum it up, we know in California, dual enrollment is expanding greatly across all forms of dual enrollment. And one particular form of dual enrollment that we've seen grow is our CCAP dual enrollment, which stands for College and Career Access Pathways dual enrollment. And with that form of dual enrollment is really intended to reach students that maybe are historically underserved in higher education or do not see themselves as college going. And so it still gives access to students that historically would have participated in dual enrollment, but it's really looking at how can we bring college to students. And so some of you may recall Assembly Bill 288 in a previous legislative cycle that really set the foundation for us to expand across the policy timeline that you see here to expand equitable dual enrollment. And so we know it can impact our adult learners as well. There's opportunities for adult dual enrollment. We can look at dual enrollment opportunities for our justice involved students and students that participate in academics in our county offices of education. And we also know that there has been investments on the K-12 side through the California Department of Education through a variety of grants to support CCAP dual enrollment as well as early and middle college development. We also know that in the California Community College System, Vision 2030 is very, very clear about the opportunity and the ask for us to expand dual enrollment to more students so that we can educate more of our Californians. And we know that there's opportunities for us to collaborate with not only our high school partners, but with our faculty. They're the ones that are going to be delivering instruction. So the Academic Senate across the state had an empowerment memo that they sent out a few semesters ago supporting the equitable expansion of dual enrollment. And so there's a memo that the Academic Senate put out to the system amongst the faculty ranks, really supporting these efforts because we know that in order for these to be meaningful student experiences, we need to be able to support our faculty in delivering instruction. And so here comes what our collaboration with the Bay Area K16 Collaborative came about to deliver this course. And so on the next slide, we have, it is with great pleasure that I'm able to introduce Dr. Augustine Cervantes, who will tell you a little bit more about our collaboration and more specifically about the investment that the Bay Area K16 Collaborative has in making this opportunity available for faculty across the Bay. Augustine?
Thank you, Lorencia. Again, Agustin Cervantes, Executive Director of the Bay Area K16 Collaborative. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share how through this collaborative we're investing in dual enrollment and the educators who really make learning meaningful. I'd like to share just real quick, this work is certainly personal for me. My very first college experience was at a community college. I was taking a math class with the rest of high schoolers from around East LA. And it was taught by, and I still remember his name decades later, Mr. Ruben Negrete. He was a first-generation college grad, a math teacher who also taught at my high school, Theodore Roosevelt High School in Boyle Heights. And he had a great ability to connect, pace the class, and make sure we truly understood not just math as a content area, but also what it meant to be at a college campus while we were in high school. And this was, of course, before we had the movement with early college credit and dual enrollment. But it's important that we realize that folks were seeing this and understanding that college access alone is an equity, that equity really happens when instruction connects to the learning experiences of our students and to their lives, and also helping those students see themselves as college students, maybe for the very first time, considering the population we serve. Let's go with the next slide. Oh, this one's good here. The Bay Area K16 Collaborative, for folks who haven't heard, I think most of you have, is a part of a state-funded effort. We work across K-12 community colleges, CSUCCs, employers, and all contributors who want to invest in pathways. One of the equity strategies we identified with the collaborative was dual enrollment. And we know that with dual enrollment, when it's built on connection and collaboration, it can really work. We're really in it to expand opportunities for students, and we feel we must invest in the people who teach them. So if we really want to see more students be successful, Black, Brown, low-income, first-gen students, especially those that remain underrepresented in early college and degree attainment, we really got to change how that instruction happens. We got to make sure that culturally responsive, inclusive, and pedagogy that's grounded in a sense of belonging are really at the forefront. Again, this isn't just about education, it's really about the workforce. So if you think of the state of California, our strength really depends on how well we develop and retain talent. And every student who feels inspired, rather than, feeling intimidated in a college class is part of that story. So here's what collaboration looks like when it comes to dual enrollment. We co-develop pathways that are clear, sustainable, and student-centered. We try to identify and align dual enrollment courses that really open up real college and career pathways. And then we also look and are looking strongly at embedding work-based learning throughout the continuum. And one of the things I'm excited about is we really want to see that also happen from the very beginning so that a student is exploring a career while also going through those courses. And all this reflects one belief that collaboration makes equity possible. And if we align our systems, our students will thrive. So what we're learning in the Bay Area K16 Collaborative, we can go on to the next slide. Thank you. What we're learning here is that across the Bay Area, implementation varies widely. The experience can differ depending on the relationships in place, policies, also your local capacity. So CLP, I'm always going to be eternally grateful for you all opening your minds and doors to exploring different ways of building capacity with our districts and community colleges. The variation shows the complexity, right? We got to get creative and we got to figure out contextually what works. Second, we've seen incredible interest and commitment from educators. So I want to thank all of our presenters today. It shows a leaning into development, to wanting to make this work and wanting to make dual enrollment be what it can be. We just want to make sure that we are substantive in the structure, support, and opportunities that are there, and also that we can learn from one another. I think that's the most exciting part about this, that we're creating a learning community here. And I think it's about having the right people in the room. So when you got instructors, administrators, and counselors, all of them trying to figure out a solution, those solutions will emerge. And so for me, I thought about preparation and supporting instructors for a long time. I worked at a college of education previously, and I said, what can the CSU contribute? And one of the ideas was, well, we do pedagogical training and know-how of K-12 teachers. If we're going to have individuals work with K-12, why don't we make sure we do it and we do it right, and also ensure that there's a culturally responsive lens for this. So that challenge of training individuals became an opportunity, and now we're really looking forward at creating a faculty learning course that the learnings from this series are informing, and that's one that's focused on equity-centered dual enrollment teaching. So our vision for the San Francisco State course, if we go on to the next slide, is one where we want to partner, continue to partner rather, both here with CLP, but also with San Francisco State University and their Graduate College of Education. And we want to develop a professional learning course that blends pedagogy and practice so that we can offer instructor strategies that are both research informed, but also classroom tested. And more importantly, that take on the understanding of the ecosystem, what it means to be the first window to college for a student, and what the importance of that is. So the shared vision here is that we want to continue to partner to integrate deep expertise in dual enrollment and equity-centered design. So CLP, kudos to you for bringing that to us. Creating the course, we want to make sure it's culturally responsive, that there's practical teaching within it, and that we do have a strong community of practice supporting it. We also want to make sure that community college instructors are able to adapt instruction and foster belonging with students. So hopefully we're able to develop something long-term that of course will evolve as a resource, because it should evolve. Our students are growing up differently, they're learning differently, and we want to make sure that we're building an acumen and capacity for that. So my hope is that beginning summer 2026, we're able to offer through San Francisco State's College of Professional and Global Education a course that prepares culturally responsive educators and instructors for dual enrollment. And again, this course isn't just about compliance. It's really about making sure our instructors can connect with students. And it really treats dual enrollment instruction as both an art and a craft, right? one that grows through reflection, collaboration, and shared learning. So I'm really looking forward to us being able to pilot this, and of course, to learn from the pilot and continue to do so. So before I close, I just want to thank everyone here, the instructors who participated in the course. I believe we had upwards of 40 instructors. Thank you all for sharing your time, expertise, and insights with us. And your experiences have directly shaped this new course. And we're looking forward, hearing from those that are here today about their experience and the continued learnings for the pilot ahead. I also want to thank, of course, CLP for your leadership, your visionary leadership, for working with us, for collaborating, for really laying this foundation on the course. And I think together we're able to make a different kind of investment, one that really helps our students have transformative learning. So without any further ado, I really want to turn this over. Thank you for building the capacity and for lighting the fire that helps students not only get to college, but thrive through it. So thank you. Lorenzo, I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Cervantes. And we appreciate the collaboration with the Bay Area K16 Collaborative and San Francisco State as well. And as Dr. Cervantes mentioned, this class was very much a pilot. And so a prototype beta testing. So think of that as we are discussing this next section of the webinar, the course structure and content. And so with the help of Dr. Reeves, as well as Dr. Naomi Castro, Michelle Samotis, Dr. Rome, other faculty members inform the content of this course. But on the next slide, we're going to just give you an overview of the structure. And so it was in 3 parts, and we really tried to design it in terms of if these were 3 one-unit courses, just for frame of reference in terms of time and content and things of that sort, just as this first go around. And so when we looked at parsing out those sections, we looked at creating conditions for success. Part 2 was cultivating learner success, and part 3 was refinement as well as reflection. And what you can see here is that we tried different modalities as well. And so there was a series of in-person convening. Shout out to Skyline College who helped house us for 3 great days of in-person learning with some of the folks you see here on the screen, and as well as the other participants. So we had 3 in-person discussions, learning sessions where we were able to take in learnings from the participants as well. And then we moved to both a synchronous and asynchronous virtual format, meeting with the same participants over the summer as well as this fall. And they were just wrapping up their final assignments as recently as this week. And so this gives you an idea of how we were also just testing out, is it better in person? Is it better online, synchronous, asynchronous? What? And so that all went into the course design as well as the content. But just to dig a little bit deeper into the content, you'll see on the next slide, it gives you a very high level overview of some of the topics and concepts we reviewed. So from equity and justice and pedagogical approaches, looking at course design elements. So there was a lot of literature that we brought in to the course, but we also were very practical in reviewing course outlines of records, knowing where to navigate that information on your respective college sites, looking at the resources that already exist at the respective campuses. And by no means it was this course or even the beta testing to supplant what is currently going on at some of the courses at some of the colleges across our system, because we know there's excellent and great work being done. This is merely to supplement some of that work and create a space for folks to really engage in those efforts. So we talked about building relationships with students. What does that look like? Applying culturally responsive pedagogical approaches to your course design, as well as assessment. What does that look like from a CRP lens? And then also in this third part, really looking at application. So in part 3, applying what our participants learned from each other, as well as from the course content that we provided in both parts 1 and 2. And so there was a lot of iterative feedback, and then again, integrating the dual enrollment component was really critical to understand the nuance. But at the end of the day, we were really emphasizing and learning from one each other that good teaching is good teaching. And it's just about understanding what culture means in the respective contexts. And so with that, I'm excited to turn it over to Dr. Reeves to talk a little bit more about when we talk about cultural responsive teaching and learning, what are we talking about, and sharing one of the resources we used in the class.
Yeah, thank you, Laurencia, and hi, everyone in Zoom world. Good to be with y'all today. And yeah, you can't have these conversations without defining what we're really trying to get to, right? What are we really trying to understand? What are we trying to direct our work towards, right? And so we kind of center Dr. Zaretta Hammond's work around culturally responsive teaching in the brain and try to really develop, like, what are we trying to do here? What are we trying to say? How does our work lead? And how's that a North Star? How do we get there? And so as you see on the screen, and I encourage everyone to go read this book. It's one of me and Otto's favorite books. It's really good, but we really wanted to ensure that faculty had a North Star of, like, what does it mean? Because we're already sometimes doing culturally responsive teaching in our classroom. We have elements of that, but what does it mean collectively to pull those things together, and how do we, in good ways, bring this forward? And so you can go to the next slide, Christina. So I wanted to show you some of the examples of the work the faculty did around culturally responsiveness. So one of the elements of culturally responsiveness is positionality. Like, do you know who you are? And I know, and people are like, yeah, I know who I am. But when we asked our faculty, like, what's positionality? Folks were like tripping over that a little bit, right? Like, you had to wrestle with it. And when you talk about positionality and you think about your identities, how do you define culture? So this is just one of the assignments we did within the class, and it's one that folks enjoyed, and you'll hear from our students later of really exploring what culture means, and having that deep dive with yourself. When do you get slow time to really think about what you define, how you define cultures, and that what Dr. Zaretta Hammond talks about, these cultural trees and these different ways of culture: surface, shallow, and deep culture. And so this was one of the assignments that we did, and just drawing that back to how that shows up in the classroom. You can hit the next slide, Christina. Um, another assignment, and we had many assignments. You'll see another little version of the cultural tree. But what we really wanted to ensure is that, and Laurencia said it earlier, are we really doing a good job of saying, here's the theoretical pedagogical approaches, and what does it mean in practice, right? And how are folks already doing some of these elements? And then, let's see that demonstrated in an assignment. We did not assign any busy work. Everything had meaning. At least we don't think we did. But everything had meaning, and we really wanted to give a multiple ways of expressing the different ways folks are incorporating that into their teaching. You can go to the next slide. So I did want to be short because the stars of the show are here, and they're going to talk about the course, and you'll really get great insight because these are faculty that are in the classrooms already, and they just were gracious enough to join us today. And so before I even let you all introduce yourselves, I just want to say thank you. As much as we learned, I learned as much from you as you learned from us. I'm just to be very honest with you, right? And I think we developed some really great lifelong relationships in the class, which is a part of cultural responsiveness, right? It's how do you create community in the classroom? And so with that, I want to introduce our faculty voices, or students in our class. And I want to start by introducing Christopher Leahy. And he can, Chris, I'm just going to go right into the question if that's okay, and then we can kind of go from there. And the question I'm going to ask Chris, and we'll put that in the chat, is please introduce yourself, Chris, and reflect on a few meaningful moments or lessons learned through participating in the course.
Of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Chris Leahy, starting with a quick self-intro. I was born and raised in the Bay Area, and I teach communication studies at Merritt Community College. I've been teaching for about 2 years across various modalities and populations, mainly teaching a mix of dual enrollment, juvenile justice, and online courses. In theory, my teaching style is rooted in critical communication pedagogy, performance pedagogy, and lots of bell hooks. In practice, what that looks like is incorporating lots of activities and discussions and creating collaborative curriculums with my students through lecture, topics, rubrics, and portfolio assignments. I'm also pro Gen AI in my classrooms. So some takeaways and meaningful moments. I mean, those in-person course meetups were really impactful. It was just so different to be in person and engage with each other, right? We had the sticky notes, we had the whiteboards, we were able to collaborate in real time, and it really was conducive to building those necessary elements of creating a learning community, because that was such a big takeaway for me, is having that built-in community with this course. There were a lot of assignments that I liked. I liked the cultural tree, and then also some of the modalities, the ways that we were allowed to submit assignments also made me reflect on how I want to allow students to submit assignments, such as they can upload like just their audio, right? They can just talk their assignment, send me a 2 to 3 minute clip instead of writing 300 words for an assignment. And I was like, wow, okay, I kind of like that. I'm still trying to tweak it to how I can build that into my grading practices to balance that sustainability, what works for students, what works for me. But I really liked a lot of those things that they did on the back end that I took notice of, right? So it's like, how can I incorporate more of that as well? I also loved the assignment we worked on when it came to adolescent needs, because I had not thought about that at all. And that's something I'm curious to learn more about, is how to bridge like the SLOs and also identify and acknowledge the specific and unique experiences of being a dual enrollment student, right? They're navigating two different systems and their brain is just wired differently than someone who's over 18, right? So those are just some things that stood out to me. I think that concisely answers that question. So I want to give some airtime to some other folks.
Chris, always thinking about everybody else. That is Chris all the way. I want to give some space for Megan, it's Megan's birthday. And I told her that I will shout her out and that we might all sing to her. But I want to introduce Megan. Go ahead, Megan.
Hello, everybody. So Megan Rodriguez. I am a assistant professor at Kenyatta College, and thank you. I teach business. I'm with the business department, and I have also taught with dual enrollment courses throughout the Sequoia High School District as well, and been in a co-teaching model, which I really took so much from. But I do want to really focus on this training more than myself, because I'm very passionate about it and I had the best experience. Similar to Chris, like I loved everything that was wrapped in this experience when it came to meeting in person, when it came to doing the activities and discussion boards with the Canvas shell, and the instructors that were leading us all were like phenomenal in their approach in really getting all of us together in one room, which I thought was an amazing experience as well, because you had all of these instructors, counselors coming from high schools, districts, as well as like the college level instructors or counselors from that area. But I think that at the end of it all, at the end of the entire training, I saw it more or less of more of like a therapy session of my positionality. And I really believe that my like I received so many takeaways, but to be like really pinpoint is that I was put in a position to look inward, and then I was able to identify not only like how I was viewing the world or how I was viewing content or how I was approaching students, but it really shifted my lens to the putting myself in the student's position and seeing the content and the world through their lenses and their positions and where they came from. And I do believe like all of the assignments were so good at doing like bringing that out of us all that were in the training. And I believe that the tree assignment, that needs to be like the staple assignment, because I think I sat at my computer and really like reassessed my entire life with that and my approach in teaching. And I do believe that the training in itself it's just, I can't even put it into words. That's how passionate it really is a profound experience. And I believe that so many people from this sector need this training, because it opens up a whole other portal of understanding on the importance of meeting students where they're at and identifying where they're coming from and how they're interpreting the information that we're providing them, and to provide them great mentorship and leadership through that experience as well. So I am very, very grateful.
Thank you, Megan. That was super dope. I appreciate that. And happy birthday again. And we're going to say it like 3 more times. And I want to ask and give some space to my friend, Alan. It's your turn. Introduce yourself, Alan. And yeah, give us some highlights or thoughts you have from the course.
All right. Good morning, everyone. or if you're watching the recording, good afternoon or good evening. Hi, everyone. My name is Alan Mar David. I have multiple roles actually at Chabot College. One is teaching. I'm an adjunct instructor under ethnic studies, so I teach at Chabot College. But at the same time, I'm a program coordinator, part of our early college programs, which basically does our dual enrollment offerings and also some of our articulated courses that are at the high school. So we work with our young populations, not just our young populations, but also our adult ed and students that are also in alt ed courses, right? And so I'll talk more about why I did it later, but in terms of meaningful moments, I was thinking about just walking in the first day. I was like, did I just commit myself to something? I just said I had two other roles, right? This is a big commitment right here. And I think I was just like being like one of those students, and it's the first day, and you're questioning yourself and you're wondering, can I do this? And I think the first day probably went out of plan because we got to introduce ourselves, and I really felt community. It's easy to feel siloed and alone in your educational journey. And when I was able to hear why everybody was in this program, in this course, they wanted to support our young students that are in these college courses. They're saying things that spoke to me. And that was a real big meaningful moment. And it really helped me open up about my experience and my struggles as an educator and figuring out this crazy world, right? And figuring out how do we teach students through all of this right now. And so I think that was a big meaningful moment. And I gotta agree with what Christopher and Megan has shared so far. I was thinking about the tree, the positionality. I'm glad that it spoke to other folks because I thought like, oh, this is, when you give a student an assignment, you're like, this is easy. It's just put it in, fill it out. And it did take some time. Like I was getting emotional too. It was therapy, like really reflecting on like me growing up, how my relationship was with my family and how we need to consider some of that with our students. So I won't go too much into it, but really I did enjoy this course. There's a lot of meaningful moments throughout the different modalities that we had. I did enjoy the in-person, but I also, not gonna lie, the asynchronous and online is also important because we are working within all those modalities now, even in dual enrollment. And so to try it, and I know we have a favorite version of how we want to receive instruction. Sometimes we got to teach in these different modes or learn in these different modes, especially in the world today. And so I will say I appreciate all of them, though I didn't really enjoy being in person with everybody. So, but I'm gonna give it back to you, Dr. Reeves, so we could hear our friend Otto.
No doubt. I mean, I think you just did the introduction.
Otto, there you go.
It's all good. It's all good. I want to introduce and give some space to our friend Otto. Same question, Otto.
Hey, everybody. So my name's Otto. I teach at Laney College, but I only teach dual enrollment classes. So just teaching at 3 different high schools in Oakland right now. I came into this class with about 20 years of teaching experience, mostly college. And now I'm teaching a younger demographic. I teach graphic design and animation. Yeah, this class, just like everyone's talking about, is really a mind-blowing experience. It's just always meta anyway when you take a class about teaching. Like we're sitting here, all of the students are teachers, experienced teachers, with a lot of different backgrounds. And I would say my biggest takeaway is kind of developing the soft skills and talking about it with other teachers. I remember getting paired up with Megan, and she shared with me like kind of how she dealt with disrespectful students. It was a totally different mindset. And I've gotten a chance to practice that actually. Like a good example would be one of the sessions, Byron and Laurencia were like, hey, what do you do with a student that's always 10 minutes late? And I remember Megan just helped me think about taking a totally different approach. Instead of maybe being strict or punishing a student, actually saying, hey, I'm glad you could make it, because you don't know what kind of barriers the student had to go through to even get to class. And uh, that's something important. That's something to keep in mind, like at all levels of teaching. And I've really been able to put that into practice this semester, getting some good results from it. Yeah, taking stuff from the book, Zaretta Hammond's book. It is one of my favorite books, Byron. Culturally responsive teaching is not like about, it's really not about the diversity of cultures, in my opinion. That is a part of it. It's really about lowering the stress, getting students' brains, especially the younger students, getting them primed for learning. So you gotta make sure that they're coming to class and having fun. And it's kind of like Augustine was saying, you have to find a connection between your content in your class and the students' personal lives. And that's a big part of helping the students find joy in learning, is that connection. Yeah, so much more. I could keep talking about it, but everyone really covered a lot of it. And I would take this class again. Byron, it is busy work though. Don't get it wrong. It is busy work. It's the busiest I've felt in a long time since grad school. And one more thing, whoever disabled the like emoji reactions, you should bring it back, because I feel like I need that. And thanks to everybody.
You need that affirmation. Bring it back, no doubt. No doubt. And Otto, you said something important that is paramount and key to culturally responsive approaches in education. It's getting students primed for learning, right? So many times we take this approach of just wanting our students to be ready when they walk in the classroom, right? But how do we then also ensure that in our classroom we are creating spaces for them to be ready when they essentially might not be for our spaces, right? And so I love that, Otto, and again, already learning from you and learning more from you, but you also shared that in class. All right, I'm gonna shut up now. I got one more question to ask all four of you, and we'll start with Chris. Chris, what has this course meant to you professionally, personally, or even how you see your work or how you see students?
In many, many ways, echoing a lot of what has already been said by my fellow panelists. Just to kind of refer to my notes, because I had to take so many just so I wouldn't forget some key points. I think learning communities is something that I've just really valued over the years, and I'm a new teacher, so I still have a lot to learn, but it's very valuable, and not just within your own echo chamber of your expertise. So I'm in communication studies. I have no problem talking someone's ear off, but I'm very curious and eager to collaborate with people across disciplines, because there's so much to be learned from each other, right? Our own individual experiences and also from our disciplines, right? So humanities and STEM can work together. I've also expanded a lot of my tool set just being in this class. I mentioned some tidbits, right? Like I like the waterfall method that I learned in this class. And there are these things that just can be applied across all modalities and populations. So just like Otto, we work in the same district. We also work at some of the same campuses in OUSD in Oakland. And so that combined with me also working in with the Street Scholars program, where I work in prison populations and at juvenile halls, I also teach dual enrollment in juvenile halls as well. So while that wasn't the focus of this training, a lot of what I learned here does apply very well in that space. I had to make some modifications, but I think that a lot of this course really primed me for every other area in which I teach, right? Regardless of the location, the subject material, etc. It also helped me better identify sustainable practices. That's been a really big theme for me as a new teacher. I'm just very eager to like work myself to death, but that's not healthy for anyone because I care so much about the work that I do. And there's also so much work to be done, especially in dual enrollment spaces, because you're not just teaching your subject material, you're also teaching these students how to be in college. So it's more of an on-ramp than like teaching it straight up as a college class. I mean, everyone is, subject to teach the way that works for them, but that can be a struggle for a lot of new DE teachers, myself included, in trying to identify like what is it like to be a college student again from the beginning. And I'm somebody who also went to community college before I transferred because of, positionality and other opportunities where I was not financially able to just go straight to a 4-year. And I really valued the experiences I had at community college. So it really took a lot for me to put myself back in that headspace of like, dang, how do I teach them how to be in college as a new college student while they're also navigating a completely different system, because K through 12, completely different system with the banking model of like, you sit there and learn and I teach, and there's all these asymmetrical power dynamics. So this course really reminded me, you know what, if anything, it humbled me. It humbled me continuously, every single class, every single assignment. And it just kept reminding me to continue to humanize my students. And this is the cool thing about this class is I'm still new to a lot of pedagogy, right? I went to grad school, I studied something, I was lucky enough to get a unique internship at my grad program. But that being said, taking one pedagogy class is never sufficient for training. And so I realized a lot of what I already do is culturally responsive. I didn't have a name to it, but now it helped expand my horizons and how I can put more of it to use and really hit the ground running. Again, I love the interdisciplinary intersectional nature of this course. Anything else? I'm going to shut up and give some airtime for my fellow panelists because I feel like I've said enough, but I can always go back to it at the end.
I wanted to tell you to keep going because it was good. But we'll go ahead and shoot that over to Megan. Megan, what has this course meant to you personally, professionally, or even how you see your work or how you see students?
I will piggyback on Chris's answer just because he's so good with words. Chris, you're just so good with words. I don't want this to come off cheesy, but I do believe that this training actually really made me like a better person at the end of the day, because it really does make you do so much in like internal work to then like, because we're all here for the better good of our students, for the better good of the future. And I am very, very adamant about building community within the classroom and having students come together, building teams and approaching it from like a business point, being that that is the, the courses that I'm actively teaching. But I also came to like this realization that it's not just about building communities, but it's also about dismantling barriers and approaching the content with like understanding or approaching the content, not just asking like, oh, is this culturally responsive, but almost asking like, how is this not culturally responsive so that I can continue to refine this, right? And continue to build while breaking all these like barriers down with the students and doing that footwork side by side, right? So it's not just about instructing and content and getting that textbook and that information to them and exams and papers and all that. It's like, hey, where are you at? How are you connecting this to your life? How do we make this real? Right? And I do find that like from like a personal level, it's almost like even approaching my daily of like, hey, you know what? I don't need to make those assumptions, or identifying like my unconscious biases, or even the way I'm parenting or the kids, like even in their, elementary school, like coming home and like, oh, so and so, this or that. And it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe something's going on, and we should be mindful of each other. And I think it's just like when you look at the grander picture, it's about the better good of community. It's about the better good of the students. So I think it's just so much more than just being culturally like responsive. It's just being like just aware. So I do believe it has done such great things for me on a personal level. And I know so many of like the panelists as well as other instructors, counselors, and from different areas of this work that they took so much from it as well. So again, grateful for it.
Yeah, that better go to community. Just put my little heart. That was so good. Thank you. I wanna give the mic to Alan.
Yeah, so I'm gonna miss the course. I'm gonna miss everybody. I'm gonna miss being part of this, being in community. Not that we can't carve out and create community at our own spaces, but there's something about being with folks around across the Bay Area, and I guess with the expansion of California. Um, like I said earlier, I have multiple roles. So I kind of did this selfishly by signing up for the course. I wanted to build my own thing up, but I also wanted to support our dual enrollment faculty on campus. A lot of them were being placed and not knowing how to deal with the populations that they were working with. Like someone might get hired on and will be placed at, we have dual enrollment at our middle school. So you might just be at a middle school all of a sudden and like was expecting to be working with 18 and up students. And now you got like essentially kids, right? And then even at the high school level, we had like seasoned instructors who might have to be placed all of a sudden and have to switch up their pedagogy to work with these different populations. And sometimes some folks didn't want to do that. And we were trying to figure out how do we best support these students. And on it, before even knowing about this program, we were trying to figure out how are we going to train up our instructors? How are we going to create a program? How are we going to request funds to do such a thing where we're going to invest in dual enrollment? Because here at our college, we were expanding at a rapid rate, but we couldn't catch everyone up and be ready. There were wonderful instructors, and they still are, and they were ready to work with young people and were adapting. But as you expand, you might not always get those folks, or they're not ready because we're hiring people brand new. And so it just so happens we saw that this training was happening. And so that was my personal reason to sign up. Like, how do we get these best practices in? And so I just want to say our students that are in our dual enrollment classes, just to get to the first day, they have to go through a whole crazy application process. It's not just signing up at your college. They have to do all these forms. They got to get approvals. They got to go through all that. And just being in your class the first day is such a feat. It's something that they really earned to be there. And I think I want to give them their props and remind everybody what a student and their families have to go through to just be there on the first day. And it's an accomplishment in itself. So I'll stop there because I definitely want to give Otto some time. But I just wanted to share that as well.
Yeah, Otto, it's your turn. What do you got?
Thanks for saving me nothing left to say. Nah, you know, Oakland Unified, I think, has really good support for dual enrollment teachers. I don't know if you guys know Fatima, but she has these workshops for us several times a semester, and I get a lot out of them. I try not to miss any of them, but those are just like 2-hour sessions. This class, you know, the CLP's class with SF State, with Laurencia, Byron, and Christina, this class is long. It's like a real commitment, like Alan was saying. We get to go a lot deeper. You know, a lot of these other workshops, they're fun, they're fast, and they're helpful with, you know, giving us strategies, but like you don't get to follow up. You don't get to just go deeper, especially right now with budget cuts, with AI, with all the changes with like religion and like Department of Education getting involved and all these new policies and just not knowing what the, you know, just uncertainty about the future. Like having this class, it's it's not only like invigorating, you know, teachers, we got to stay motivated, but it's also helping us feel like we're doing something to to win the fight. Okay. And that's pretty much it. It just feels good. It feels like I'm able to be part of a big team that's doing something that's going to make a positive change.
Thank you all. I appreciate that. I mean, I think at this time we want to be able to take some questions from the audience if there are any. And so we would love if you can throw your question in the chat. And panelists, feel free if you want to speak to that question. If there are any, you can unmute and answer the question. So as you are all getting your questions ready for our panelists, Sean said, I wish I had a question. um, uh, do we want to, I mean, Augustine, we do have a question loaded up in case there aren't any. Do we want to move to that question, y'all? Yeah. Okay. We will still, if there are questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. Until then, though, we do have a question ready for our group, and all of you don't feel free to bow out, but we definitely need somebody to answer it. And so in class, I'll say, I used to ask her like, hey, who wants to answer this question? Nobody will say anything. Then we'll do group work. They'll talk about it in general, like they'll talk about it in there, and they'll be loud, and we'll say, all right, well, share out, and everybody be like this.
I feel like Chris and I always spoke up. Excuse me.
No, I don't know. I'm just joking. But let me ask this last question, and then we can wrap up. As we build this professional learning course at SF State, what kinds of supports or learning experiences will be most valuable for our instructors, especially those new to dual enrollment or working with diverse high school populations? And anyone can take on that question.
I'll jump in, and
Yeah.
I'll do it as succinctly as possible to give some airtime to other folks as well. Everything. There's so many things I could say as a new teacher in general, being thrown in all these different environments, like late start, summer, juvenile hall, like all this stuff. It's very chaotic. So it's a lot of being thrown in the lion's den repeatedly. I would say learning communities, you have to really go out of your way to find them and create them. Building sustainable practices, it's going to be very tempting as a lot of us are teaching many different modalities and different formats. You're constantly adjusting, as Alan was saying too. Sometimes you've been teaching something a certain way for so long, it's really hard to be open to changing things up a little bit. Like, oh, I've never had to teach students how to do certain, English writing techniques like citation formatting, but now you might have to, or might be helpful for students. So you really have to reconsider and reflect on that like heavily. And having a learning community is going to help balance that, whether it's through trainings like this or just creating your own at your own campus or department. I would also say some other things. Give grace. Lots of grace. You've heard it thematically throughout this whole presentation, but you really don't know what's going on in students' world. So whether you're responding to something at midnight or whatever it is, like really just put aside that anger, that frustration, whatever it is, and be like, you know what, this is a human being. And for those of you who can relate, like I'm first gen, I went to community college, like it was tough. It was tough to navigate these different systems, K through 12 and college. And so just to give as much grace as you can, because you never know, even if they're trying to game the system or one up on you and be like, hey, like, everyone in my family died, whatever, and they're lying to you, whatever it is, like still give some grace. It doesn't matter. It's not your job to punish them and create even more trauma for them that they've already experienced through these systems. So really keep that in mind, because they're already treated like they're criminals, right? Metaphorically. And then I actually teach people who are, in these facilities who are already still treated even more like that. So if you want to avoid that school to prison pipeline, both literally and metaphorically, we really have to change things up. Some other quick things: get really used to repeating yourself often, have automated announcements, have an end of class, start of class reminders. They really need to hear it 100 times, even if it's tiring for you. Plan decompression time in between campuses and classes, especially if you're like me running across the Bay all the time. I would say the most important things: it's okay to center yourself in the classroom. When we talk about culturally responsive, don't just do surface level like mentions and representation in your like readings and stuff like, oh yeah, like here's a picture of some Middle Eastern people or some Black people or whatever. It's like, go deep, have some nuance. And if you don't know how to go deep yet, which takes time because teaching is iterative, then just focus on what you can and start with what you know, which is yourself. So I'm Middle Eastern, I'm Iranian, so I can speak to that pretty well and clearly, and being queer, etc. So you start with that and you build. So for example, in my interpersonal classes that I teach sometimes, I'll talk about, when we talk about love and dating, halal dating, arranged marriages, and matchmaking, right? We don't have to talk about traditional or Western forms of dating as well. We only have so much time, but create that variety and nuance because the students also love that. Another segue related to that is balance street smarts with book smarts. Teach about your local area. I'm from the Bay, so I can speak to it pretty well because students love when they feel connected to each other and build this community, but also the places in which they live. So there's so much more I could say about that, but just to, scratch the surface, I want to give some time to some other folks.
No, that's so good, and I wish I can go on too, right? Because all of those pieces Chris talked about is culture, right? Culture stretches beyond our racial, ethnic, and gender identity, right? There's culture of location, there's culture of time, there's culture of spaces, and so thank you, Chris, for highlighting that. And I'm being aware of time, and I do see 2 questions in the chat, and so I'm wondering, Laurencia, Augustine, if we have our panelists answer the second question first. Augustine, maybe then you can address the SFU question and then we can close out. Is that fine? Okay. So panelists, I don't know who wants to take that question, but it's that question of how do you introduce culturally relevant pedagogy to faculty who are hesitant to adopt it or don't see the significance of applying it in their classes? I have a whole class about that, but I'll let our panelists, whoever wants to take on that question. See, this is what used to happen in class. Otto, do you want to take that, or Alan?
Yeah, I'll take it. Once again, I'm gonna have to go against my natural instinct of being a drill sergeant and access the soft skills. Instead of firing that teacher, I would just say, hey, don't you want to be better? Don't you actually want to improve? It's culturally responsive teaching is not, it's actually just a better way to teach. And there's so many ways you can go about it to make it match what you're doing, your content, that I think you have to culturally be responsive to that teacher to get them to see how that it actually works. I know that's kind of a bad explanation for it. It's like I'm defining a word using the word itself, but it really is true because you're dealing with the brain, especially the adolescent brain. And when you look at statistics, you look at data, and you look at how teenage brains work, you know that it's, if you deal with kids, you just know that there is a technique to it. There is a technique to training people, training animals, training anything with a brain. You have to go about it in a certain way. There's not necessarily a right way to do it, but there's definitely a wrong way. So that's my take.
Beautifully said, Otto. Literally what I was thinking exactly.
Yeah, thanks, Otto. I'll let Augustine answer that second question, and then we can, I'll invite Laurencia to wrap us up.
Absolutely. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who spoke, to our panelists sharing their testimonial, CLP for organizing this. And just to answer the question, all of this, the gestalt of everything you heard, we want to use to then develop a 3-part course that emphasizes practical, culturally responsive approaches in a diverse and interdisciplinary, call it a community of practice, which is what these folks were exemplifying through their commentary. And we are looking at working with San Francisco State's College of Professional and Global Education so that we are not offering it necessarily 4 units, but it's modular so that it's an easier access point. Of course, we would work with districts in partnership if they would like to embed this as part of professional development for a respective college. But in the past, when I've gotten a chance to offer this at another CSU, we were able to find a very affordable price point where an individual can opt in or an institution can opt in on behalf of a set of individuals. That is what we're looking to do. it's under construction. Obviously, this course is going to inform what that's going to look like. And we are hopeful that by summer of 2026, so in about 8 months, we will have an iteration of this course that also has gone through the necessary academic senate and faculty touch points to be approved at San Francisco State and then made accessible for individuals to be able to take it as part of, call it continuing ed. I've been able to offer it with continuing ed units on the line for it. So that's one of the logistical points I also want to make sure we work out, so that if it helps increment somebody's pay, we want to make sure we're able to do that. But of course, it's tied into the teaching and learning that happened in this course. So after we synthesize this across the way, we'll start on the co-design and co-construction of this course with San Francisco State faculty.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Cervantes. And again, thank you, Megan, Alan, Otto, Chris, for sharing your insights on behalf of your colleagues. If you want to stay up to date on the development of the course and the latest iterations that Dr. Cervantes had talked about, feel free to stay connected with the Career Ladders Project on our website, as well as the Bay Area K16 Collaborative. Again, when you're delivering instruction in the dual enrollment context, you don't have to sacrifice rigor. You can still be accountable. And it's just about creating these opportunities for students to not only access college, but to be successful. And we're hoping that this gave you a glimpse into how you might be able to do that through community and culturally responsive pedagogical approaches. So again, stay connected with us, and we will be sending out the recording as well as responses to any outstanding questions. Thank you all again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Happy birthday, Chris and Megan.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care, everyone.